Hello everyone, Cassie here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel for another video. Today we are going to be celebrating the Sparkle Season Holiday Release with Trinity Stamps with a video hop. So you are going to want to go down to the description box down below after this video and hop along with us for a chance to win a prize. I'm going to be using the brand new Baking Spirits Bright stamp set. We've got our coordinating dies to go along with it. And then I'm bringing in the Foliage Flare stencil from last release. You're going to see this is going to be a mini slimline. So I have a piece of watercolor cardstock cut down to 3 inches by 6 inches. I'm spritzing some scattered straw on there and then splattering a little bit of tea dye distress spray stain. And then we're going to spray just a tiny bit of that tea dye on there, and we're going to hit that with our heat tool, make sure all of that is good and dry so that we can move on to the next phase of our background. You guys know I love making backgrounds. And this one, I don't know, I was kind of inspired by thinking about my childhood wallpaper in my mom's kitchen growing up and doing all the baking that we did. So my next step is to bring in some tea dye distress ink, and we're going to blend that on with our blender buddy just all along the edges. We're going to make this look nice and aged. Not that my walls as a child looked aged, but you know, I'm older now, so I imagine if we still had those walls, they would look a little aged. All right, next we're bringing in the Foliage Flare stencil. I'm going to put down the first stencil. This is a 2-part stencil. I'm going to tack that down with some magnets onto my tonic platform. And then I have some distress ink. This is the Candied Apple. And bringing in our blending buddy, we are going to blend that all over that background. And actually, the wallpaper that my parents had in their kitchen was the opposite of this, actually. It was red or orange, and then it had gold for this part. So I'm kind of going, you know, opposite, I guess. But it was very inspiring. All right, we'll pull that away, and then we're going to bring in the next stencil, which is super easy to line up because of the embossed lines. So then once we get that all lined up, we'll tack that down with those magnets once again, and I'm going to bring in some Fired Brick, which is just a little bit darker than the Candied Apple. So it will bring in that contrast. Obviously, you could go with the same colors if you wanted, or completely different. You know, you could have a ton of fun with this stencil. I used it in a previous video, and I used it with some turquoise on a turquoise background just to add some color on color. And yeah, I really like this stencil a lot. So once we're done spreading that all over, we'll pull that away, and you can see the contrast. I really like how that turned out. Yay! And then we'll clean up our mess, and we'll move on to the next part of our background, which would just be to sprinkle a little bit of water on that background to age it a little bit more. So I just put big drops on there, kind of let those sit for a few seconds, and then I'm going to wipe them away. And we'll move that off to the side after we've heat set it so that we can move on to our stamping and our coloring. So here's our darling little gnome image, the Baking Spirits Bright. We're going to bring in Olo markers. Those are alcohol markers. And I stamped this image out onto some Express-It cardstock using some Ink on 3 blackout ink. That is a good color, or a good combination if you were trying to do some alcohol marker coloring, because the blackout ink won't bleed. And that paper, the Express-It paper, is actually my favorite to use when I am trying to do alcohol marker coloring. The Olos are fairly new to me. A lot of you know that. Well, they're new to everybody, really. But mine came, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I've been trying to use them just continuously so that I can get a good feel for how they are. They are a lot like most any other alcohol markers, but I will say they are super juicy. And I think that has a lot to do with the cartridges that they have for their ink. They're not going to dry out until you've run out of ink. So I really like how juicy they are. I like the colors that we have. I know they're working on more colors. I am definitely hooked, but I do like that you can use these with any alcohol markers that you already have. And you'll see, because I'm going to bring in some of my Copics, and I'll use those as well. So I'm definitely not done using those. I'll continue to use those because I have quite an investment in that, but I like that I can combine the two together. All right, I've done a pretty good job, I think, of putting all those colors up on the screen so that you know. And then we're blending out. I tend to go lightest to darkest. That is nothing new if you've watched me before. That's just how I like to color it. I color best that way. I think if I really sat and practiced using dark to light, I could do fine, but I find that I use less ink when I go light to dark. And that is, again, a personal preference. You do what is best for you or what works best for you. But I love this tiny little image, or not tiny, it's a 3x4 stamp set. I love this darling little image, and it's fun to color. It brings back a lot of great memories of baking with my grandmother. I don't know why, because I guess Christmas and making all the cookies. Or my mother, she would whip up all the different batches of cookie dough and put those in the fridge. And then when she was ready to bake, she would just start baking. Those are such good memories. I'm sure you all have some really great memories as well. Now we're going to come in and we're going to color our background with some BG 2.1 just to add a little bit of contrast back there, because I decided not to really put any color on the countertop. We'll bring in some BG 2.3 for a little bit darker contrast, and then we'll blend that with our BG 2.1 just to make sure that that is blended out a little bit. And then we bring in just a CG1 to add a little bit of coloring on that countertop, but not too crazy. And then once we're done with that, we're going to bring in our matching die, and we'll tack that down with a little bit of mint tape so that we can run that through our die cutting machine. Now, like I said before, this is a part of a video hop, and we're celebrating this brand new release for Trinity Stamps. So many great holiday stamps and dies. You're going to want to go take a look. But yeah, so yeah, I'll have a link down below in the description box. I tried to stamp out the first time and I forgot to use my anti-static powder tool. You really can't tell on the screen, but I can tell in person. So I re-stamped it and used my anti-static powder tool. And then I'm going to heat set that till that is smooth and melted. We'll bring in the matching dies for our sentiments because I love that Trinity Stamps does that. We'll run that through our die cutting machine, and then we will be ready to start doing some assembly. I wanted my image to be popped up using some foam tape, so I'm just going to put a little bit of that on the background. Then I'll peel that off and we'll stick that down. I wasn't sure which of those sentiments I wanted to use, to be honest with you. I thought I might put one on the inside, and then last minute I decided to put them both on the front. I'm going to bring in my crafty glue friend. That is the newer glue from Trinity Stamps as well. Put the baking spirit sprite down at the bottom, and then at this point I decide what would that look like to put this other sentiment on top, and I love it, so we'll do that. And then we need to get a card base ready. So for a card base, since this is a mini slimline, I have a 6x6 piece of white cardstock. I'm going to score that at 3 inches. And then we can take our crafty glue friend and we can attach down our panel to our base. I know there's probably a lot of great embellishments you could put on the front of this, but I love just that background the way that it is. So we're going to leave it as is. All right, so I really hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And again, be sure to go down to the description box down below to go to the next video in our hop. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day.